Warning, this video will contain spoilers for The Walking Dead Season 6, Episode 11, Untie, so please be cautious as you go through and watch this video. What is going on, everyone? This is NinjaGeek here, and of course we're bringing you another review episode of The Walking Dead, talking about the episode that happened last night, Untie. And first of all, I want to say, like I usually do in all my videos, I like to say something before we start reviewing the episode, is that I really actually obviously enjoyed this episode. I like a lot of the episodes of The Walking Dead, but comparing it to last week's episode, I felt like there was a difference. This episode definitely took more of the core roots of the original Walking Dead from seasons 1 and 2, where there's one storyline and it's force-driven throughout the entire thing that makes you watch the whole episode and stay intensified to it, whereas last week's episode kind of jump-cutted between a lot, and obviously, as we know, we started 2 months later on from the mid-season premiere of Season 6. We started 2 months after that with last week's episode, and then it kind of jump-cutted between different characters. That sort of storyline is okay, but personally, I do enjoy this storyline way better of just focusing on one thing, because if you do remember back in Season 1 and 2 of The Walking Dead, it was mainly just one storyline. Yeah, you had extra characters and other stuff, but it was mainly one. Then in Season 3, it kind of veered off to the governor's side, and then obviously in Season 4, when the group broke up, it kind of went back to the different storylines of the different characters. So I feel like this episode really took it back to the roots of the original The Walking Dead, and what all shows should take on is just focus on one thing. Yeah, you can have multiple things in different episodes, but don't try and do that too much. So in general, I really did love this episode. So what do you guys think of Michael Cudlitz? Also, obviously he plays Abraham. What do you think of him? In the beginning, we obviously saw him come in Season 4 after, right when the mid-season premiere happened, and that just kind of took on a whole new character role. We didn't know who he was at first, or potentially who he could have been, and it turns out that he has stuck with Rick's side of the group as he's met him. And yeah, Rick and him have had their fair share of different fights and different arguments, but in general, I do think that Abraham is an essential asset to the group. I don't think they would have been anywhere without Abraham. But talking more on Abraham's character, aside from the fact that I think that he's an essential part of the group, I think that he's the odd kind of one, because he does make those funny interval jokes, as we've seen in last night's episode, where he made yet another funny joke. Listen in.
When you were pouring the Bisquick, you trying to make pancakes?
Not only does he have excellent lines, but I also feel like he's the kind of character that doesn't know which way to go. Obviously, Glenn has Maggie, and they're there for each other. But Abraham, who does he have? He obviously is leaning more towards Rosita, but then you have Sasha on the other hand, and he just doesn't know which way to turn, and we can see that within this episode, that he's struggling to find which one that he, I guess, likes. You have him sleeping with Rosita in the beginning of the episode, but then it's like, who does he go with? Sasha? We don't really see a lot of Sasha within this episode. I think she stayed back at Alexandria, so I think there's some kind of emotional twist in him that he just doesn't know where to turn in terms of that, and I like the way they portrayed that within the video, the different jump cuts within the episode, the different jump cuts between Sasha, Abraham, and then cutting back to Rosita at the beginning. I felt like that was a great part within the episode. Jesus could have been playing a trick on Rick and his group again, like the firecracker incident that we saw in last week's episode, but that's not how it turns out to be. It's an actual crash from the Hilltop Survivors that they managed to escape into this dark building, and for whatever reason they chose to hide here. I mean, maybe it was the only thing that was closest, I don't know, but they ended up finding the footsteps that led to that building, and they got the Hilltop Survivors out of there. And in general, everyone still might even see Jesus as a bad man, even though his name is contradictory to that. But in my own honest opinion, I still wouldn't trust him, but I don't think he's a bad man. And I told you in last week's episode, in my own thoughts, that he wasn't a bad man. It's just, I still wouldn't trust him, as no one should trust anyone, but I don't think that he means any harm, as we can see what he's got his community with the Hilltop Survivors now. Not to mention, in finding these Hilltop Survivors, they end up finding a real doctor. No, not Denise, get her off the damn screen. We're talking about Arlen here, and it seems like a very nice guy up front, and of course, and that he has a bunch of medication, and he can actually help Maggie and Glenn with Maggie's pregnancy, obviously, since Glenn and Maggie are husband and wife. He can actually help, instead of you have Denise, which is somewhat of a doctor, sort of, like she studied it. We actually have someone here that could potentially help them, and I think that will happen in the future, because obviously we see at the end of the episode how he ends up helping her her at that moment, but we don't know what the whole deal is with the whole Saviors thing that we have to get into more towards the end of the episode. So finally we get to meet the leader of Hilltop, known as Gregory. Gregory doesn't seem like a very strong man in person. At first when you see him, he seems like he has his guard down all the time. Just his personality, the way that he was talking to Rick's group, he just doesn't, in my own opinion, seem like he has a great defense to what he has in it. It's true, you could even see that he has no weaponry. He's running low on different ammo stocks and other things as well, and you could really see that reflecting in him. He's not that great of a person. You could, as far as letting people in defense of the area, comparing him to Rick, there's just no competition. And then when you look at what actually happens, you could even see it, is because within the first 5 minutes of the show, basically, for on-screen time, Gregory just immediately gets stabbed. I mean, what a great first impression right there. But speaking of getting stabbed, one of the more higher escalated cliff moments of the episode was where Rick actually, and his group obviously, actually end up helping out with Ethan, and who ends up stabbing Gregory, and he takes care of him. In other words, lots of blood there, and the people of Hilltop, I just don't know what their thoughts are. They could be thinking, like, who are these random survivors that just randomly came in? Jesus tries to contradict them and break up the entire situation, which I guess plays great into the character that he's supposed to be, but I think that he plays a very good role there, and Rick just shows, like, the emotions that he's feeling at the time. I mean, it just seems like Rick can't go anywhere without just destroying everything first, but it had to be done, right? Because otherwise, if Rick and his group weren't there, obviously, what would have happened? Gregory would have probably died, and everyone probably would have either gotten attacked or something else worse could have happened, and then they probably would have all ended up dead later on anyways. In this episode, we finally get to learn about Negan and the Saviors. It's been a while since we've heard Negan come into play, obviously a while back before. It was either in the middle of Season 6, the first half, or sometime even before Season 6. We knew Negan was casted as a character, so we know he was coming into the show, and then with the extra added on of the mid-season with Daryl and Abraham and Sasha, we thought that they were actually going to come in sooner than later, but it turned out that Daryl, whipped out the rocket launcher on them, and that was the end of that particular group. But now we are coming back to the Saviors, which I think is a good part, and it leads the episodes further on. It drives them forward with potential enemies close, similar to the Governor and how he was towards the end of the Governor's life cycle, I guess you could say, where it was his Season 4 mind. Well, hopefully, I mean, Negan could be potentially, like, way, way worse than that, and we have a huge threat coming up against us, and I'm excited to see what that brings along for the future episodes. Just the knowing that there's a huge threat out there just means a lot for the future of the series. One person who we haven't really talked about in a while is Maggie, and I feel like they gave her a very important role in this episode. She's stepping up as a leader, as Deanna wanted her to, as she knew that she could be, and I feel like she's taking on this role as a leader, because we see her communicating with Gregory. It's not Rick, it's not Daryl, it's not a guy, it's a girl figure actually communicating with Gregory, and she makes very strong and emotional at times points to him about what they can do to protect not only Hilltop, but protect Alexandria and get the stuff, the food supplies and the armories and everything that they need. What the deal obviously is that Rick and his group take out the Saviors. That's what they're planning on doing right now, so that they don't have to trade with them. The Hilltop people don't have to trade with the Saviors anymore, Negan's group. And then the trade can go easier, and they don't have to worry about giving away stuff just so that they can live. So that's the plan right now. Obviously, I doubt that's going to work out really well. It's like, oh yeah, let's just go kill all these Saviors, and then it's just going to be over, because we know Negan's been casted as a character, so I feel like he's going to last a long time, and I hope at least they give him a season or more, possibly, because if he lasts like 1, 2, 3, episodes, I don't know how that's going to work out. I hope that there's a really strong, like, enemy character, sort of like the Governor was. Sometimes they did drag his character out too much, like it was way too much, but just having him as an enemy and then cutting back and forth between them at the perfect right times seems like it would be a great idea for the series to continue on, and Maggie definitely shows that she can be a potential leader, even possibly, work with Rick and communicate to try and figure out the best plans possible for the continuation of the series. And that's basically how the episode ends off, on a good note, sort of. There was no cliffhanger, nothing leading us into something like last week's episode where it was an abrupt ending where we found Jesus just escaped randomly. That was kind of a cliffhanger ending. This time we don't have the quote cliffhanger ending, but we do have the potential threat coming in, as we've talked about with these saviors, and how next week's sneak peek episode actually combining that into this is that, obviously we see them driving off in the trailer, so they're going back to Alexandria, my guess, and Rick is going to talk with everyone there about what they have to do to survive and to live and get the food that they need to help them, because they're running out of food and you need food to live. But during that scene, you could see how Morgan just isn't having any of that. His facial expression just doesn't look that enthusiastic about killing people. Obviously, we know from the past that he wants people to be treated equally and to let everything live because all life is precious. So we don't really know how that's going to go well. Maybe Morgan is going to change Rick's mind. I highly doubt that because Rick is a very strong, set-minded person. But we don't know, and I hope, honestly, Rick goes through with this plan. Obviously, that's what he plans to do. He's a merciless person like that, and I could see that definitely happening, but I don't think it's going to obviously happen all at once, like, oh yeah, let's just take this group out, and that's going to be it. There's obviously a hope there's going to be some story and character development, but we'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think about this week's episode and the future episodes to come? And more personally, what do you think about Abraham as a character and Maggie stepping up to the plate more as a leader? Well, let me know what you think about these developing characters growing stronger within the series. But that's it on this week's episode. If you have any improvements that you would like me to do, leave a comment below on that as well. Leave a like, of course, if you did enjoy these videos. I do them every single week. And subscribe for more of these videos and more Call of Duty and other gaming content along the way. This is NinjaGeek. I'm out. And peace.